Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Reed, Vedic astrologer with over 20 years of experience in the astrological field. If you're interested in scheduling a consultation with me, you can do so at the link you see above in this video. And while you're on the website, I have one ongoing course and another approaching course, one on the nakshatra secrets and the other on elements of the Panchangam, for which there's a 10% discount on registration until the 8th of May. So today I have a very special guest on my channel, and he's going to talk to us about the Lajittaadi Avasthas and the Deeptaadi Avasthas. And for those of you who don't know what that is, don't worry. He's going to explain all of those things to you, and equally how to properly judge the Lajittaadi Avasthas using the Deeptaadi Avasthas. So here he is, Levi.
Hi, Michael.
Excellent to have you on.
Thank you. It's good.
Levi and I have known each other for a long time, so.
Yeah, we have, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think 8 years or something.
Yes, going back a while.
It's an honor to be on your channel, Michael, and thank you for inviting me.
Good. I'm glad you're here.
It's a very interesting technique. Qualifying the Lajittaadi Avasthas by Deeptaadi Avasthas is just something that is really helpful, worthwhile to share. I think Ernst Wilhelm has done a tremendous job in putting out these Lajittaadi Avasthas and the importance of it, all these techniques of modifying and qualifying, quantifying also all these very complex, subtle ways of going about a horoscope. And I think especially when we're into, the whole Parashara style of astrology, whatever happens in between something, our whole subjective experience of reality and reflecting that in an astrological language is a complex thing. So I think all the benefit goes to him. And so I'm very glad today to be presenting that here, that technique, which is, I think, really very cool.
Excellent. So do you want to tell everybody a little bit about what the Lajittaadi Avasthas are so they have a good understanding of that? Yeah?
Sure, yeah. Well, the Lajittaadi Avasthas show the fulfillment of a planet, how it shows the strategy that we apply or the strategies that we apply to become fulfilled or unfulfilled human beings, basically. That's what it is. It's an astrological language based on natural friendship. So we're going to look at how planets influence other planets. Some planets are friends towards planets, inimical towards planets, or neutral towards planets. And of course, the planets represent the consciousness aspects, right? So Venus represents our value, the way we judge things. Mars is our, the way we exert our energy into the world and how strongly we can really act on our inspirations, for example, right? Mars is the general in that sense. So these planets represent our consciousness, and they have their inherent symbolism. They have their natures. They want to express their natures, basically. They're also house rulers, right? Most planets, all planets except the sun and the moon, rule two signs, and so they're going to have a rulership over these particular areas in life, which is what the houses are. And so it's going to be important in terms of what they represent naturally and also what they rule. The Lajittaadi Avasthas have both a behavioral as well as a predictive influence. And so how well a planet is able to take care of its cusps, its house, is going to be indicated and shown by the Lajittaadi Avasthas. And I think that's a very important part of Parashara astrology. So the fulfillment of the planets, basically, that's what we're looking at. What strategy do we apply? Okay, we constantly attract bad relationships into our lives, or a specific partner that makes us feel miserable and so on. Why is that? What is that strategy? Why do we attract that? Mostly from a subconscious, unconscious space, we seem to attract things. It gives us insight into how these unconscious structures are dominating us, and are directing us or showing us the way to certain results. I think going into them makes us a lot more conscious about these patterns. Of course, the nodes are going to be very important there because they represent our ancestors and where we feel comfortable and uncomfortable, and our security paradigm and so on. So mixing all these things, which are subtle things and complex things, can be confusing. And so finding out these techniques and combining these avasthas is one of the ways we can get more clarity. So Lajittaadi Avasthas are that. The Deeptaadi Avasthas are given in Parashara Horashastra, but in many other texts. Parashara gives 9 Deeptaadi Avasthas, which show the circumstance of the planet. Okay, so a good circumstance shows a planet that is in good dignity. If you're 10th Lord is in exaltation, well, concerning your occupation or your work, there seems to be like a good condition, a good circumstance. Now, it's not going to determine your happiness. That will be shown by the Lajittaadi Avasthas. But these Deeptaadi Avasthas will qualify how we experience the Lajittaadi Avasthas, how we experience fulfillment or unfulfillment. I will explain what these Deeptaadi Avasthas are. We can go over these, then also connect them to the Lajittaadi Avasthas because they are connected, they are similar, some of them are, and then see what we can assess from there and how we can mix them up.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to kind of add, a lot of the ways that I generally try to describe houses. In other words, you were touching on the concept of, Lajittaadi Avasthas showing how a planet will impact its houses and things like that. I like explaining to people that the planets in Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra represent conscious incarnations of Vishnu. So they have a very conscious presence in the horoscope, whereas the Rashis represent the unconscious limbs of time personified. So they, in a sense, don't have anything in them except the consciousness that is brought to them by the planets that rule them, by planets that aspect them, etc. And that energy that's impacting the Rashi on that level then gets further fine-tuned into houses. And I think it's really good because when people understand that, they get the idea of like if this planet's shamed, as in one of the Lajittaadi Avasthas, it can impact this area of life, and etc. And I think you were saying the same thing. I just, I wanted to add that particular point to it. But please continue.
Absolutely. I've made a little table here. I'm just going to pull it up. We said that Deeptaadi Avasthas shows the circumstance, right? So the situation of a planet. It's not going to determine the whole thing. It's not going to determine your fulfillment, but it's going to help substantially. Of course, when you're in a good situation, let's say you're going through a very, very rough time and you have a lot of money in your bank, it's going to be much more easy when you're going through a rough time and don't have any money on the bank, right? Something like that. You can have an amazing work situation. You have a lot of prestige and so on. That would show a great dignity in Deeptaadi Avasthas connected to your work, right? Connected to the 10th house and so on. But then that planet can be seriously starred by Lajittaadi Avasthas. So the fulfillment in respect to that area, in respect to work, would suffer, and the person would feel unhappy in work, which Lajittaadi Avasthas are going to show the result, right? It's going to show how capable a person is of maintaining their cusps, whatever these areas represent. So in that sense, it has a predictive, it's an important predictive aspect to consider.
Do you think, like, for instance, if you've got a planet in a poor Lajittaadi Avasthas that shows a, perhaps a psychological complex or something like that in a particular area, but it happens to be in a good Deeptaadi Avasthas, would that then show the capacity to handle that quote unquote complex in a more positive manner?
It would help it, yes, especially the dignity would help it, of course, because the circumstance would be supporting that problem. Now, by itself, the Lajittaadi Avasthas is going to have the say on it, because if the Lajittaadi Avasthas is starved and it's going below a certain point, then the person will not be able to defend or make sense of those house cusps. It would not be able to manifest those house cusps because of not feeling fulfilled by it at all. So there's not going to be put energy into that field of life.
Right.
And so now it could show the work or the home or something is a very exalted thing. But, if that Lajittaadi Avasthas shows unfulfillment, then the person is just going to show I'm going to be separated from that house, how exalted that may be, for example. Dignity can show a lot of circumstance, like the situation that we're in, right? The Deeptaadi Avasthas, and Deeptaadi Avasthas are based on true dignity. It's a combination of natural friendship or natural relationships and temporal relationships, right? So, and this is being determined, of course, in the Rashi chart, but we're also going to look at the Deeptaadi Avasthas in all the Vargas. If you are in a good situation, like if you have beauty around you, I was looking at this from a horoscope of a woman who's going through a rough emotional time, like depression. If the Deeptaadi Avasthas, right, if the situation is good around her, it's going to help that, but it's not going to determine whether that depression is going to end or be healed or something like that. Now, it's going to help. It's not going to determine that. Lajittaadi Avasthas is going to show, let's say like the moon is conjunct Saturn or something, right? And so moon is going to be starved by Saturn, right, heavily, by conjunction, because, you know, any planet conjunct Saturn is going to be starved. That moon, that self-image, that subjective consciousness, that image is going to starve. It's going to feel starved by Saturn. So what you're going to do is there any help to that moon, right? Is what planet is helping that moon, because Saturn is starving it. And then based on what that planet represents, the helping planet, we're going to, you know, advise or counsel the person to really take advantage of that planet, to really implement that, to focus on that specific, what that planet may represent, right? For example, and that would be like the key point to get into. The Deeptaadi Avasthas, the fact that it shows like a planet in a great dignity, looks like good. It will show like, okay, this person has some good support from the environment, for example. You see, so it's a subtle thing, but it will become clear when we go into some examples, you know, because this is, of course, a little theoretical, but the Deeptaadi Avasthas are based on true dignity. Lajittaadi Avasthas are based on natural relationships. So, for example, Saturn can be in Scorpio in a natural friend sign, right? So in the Lajittaadi Avasthas, it would you know, experience starvation. But Mars could be like in the sign next to it, making it a temporary friend. And so it would be in the Avastha, the Deeptaadi Avasthas of Dina, for example, right? Which is scarce in a neutral dignity. See, so there's some differences there, of course. But, and this is based on, you know, the difference between the true dignity and the natural dignity. Okay, so now let's first go into this Deeptaadi Avasthas. So there's 9. Prasha gives 9. The first is Deepta, which means a planet is radiant or in exaltational Mula Trikona, the highest dignity a planet can be in. Then a planet can be in Swashta Avasthas, which means self-abiding or confident. This is when a planet is in its own Rashi. A planet can be in Pramudita or delighted Avastha. This is when a planet is in a great friend's Rashi. Shanta is the next dignity, which means serene. This is when a planet is in a friend's Rashi. So these first 4 Deeptaadi Avasthas reflect good dignities. And this is going to be important later on when we look at the Lajittaadi Avasthas and in the way they will qualify those, right? How we experience that fulfillment or unfulfillment. Then we have the Dina Avastha, which means scarce Avastha. This is when a planet is in a neutral Rashi. So it's going to give 50% good, 50% bad, all right? Which is always an interesting Deeptaadi Avastha to consider. Because, you know, a lot depends on the person itself, we could say, to fill in. Then a planet can be in Dukkita or miserable Avastha. This is when a planet is in an enemy's sign or in a great enemy's sign. The 7th Deeptaadi Avastha is Kala or Bita Avastha, which means low, depressed, or alarmed. This is when a planet is in debilitation. These first 7 Deeptaadi Avasthas will have a big say on how the Lajittaadi Avasthas will be experienced, especially, you know, Garvita, Mudita, Kshudita, and Trishita. But I'm going to explain that later on. Now we have also Vikala Avastha, which is when a planet is with an enemy's, with a cruel planet or with a malefic planet. This is when a planet is impaired. So there's going to be something impaired about that planet, either on an emotional level, on a physical level, on a mental level. It could play out on many levels. In planet conjunct, cruel planet is impaired. And then the last is the Kopi Avastha, which is when a planet is joined with the sun. So it's going to be stressed. That is what Kopi represents, or frustrated, we say. But I would say Saturn Mars is more a frustrating aspect. I think Kopi is more like a stressed point in a horoscope. Because the sun is, of course, the hottest planet. And any planet that is conjunct the sun is going to be sacrificed because the sun is number 1. And it shows that, right? So we have Venus-Sun conjunction. Well, that Venus is going to be sacrificed because the sun is just number 1 and too hot for that Venus to really feel fulfillment on a practical, you know, worldly Venusian level. Okay, so that's the 9 Deeptaadi Avasthas. Again, they're based on true dignity.